Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Goeiemorgen. Sanbonan nonke. Molweni. Mangwanani. Dumelang. Jambo. Welcome to the 9th Teaching and Learning in Higher Education Conference. I am here to briefly introduce the Director of Teaching and Learning and the Chair and Convener of the Teaching and Learning Conference, Dr. Rabbi Danpath, to give us his words of welcome. Dr. Danpath.
Good morning, welcome. Welcome to the East Coast where the sun never sets and where the people never stop smiling. I've been doing this now for the past 6 years, and there's a kind of a familiarity about it. And it's so good to see familiar faces return to the conference each year. And you've enriched this conference over the years to a point where it is really now an international conference. And I will shortly read the list of participating countries that are here. So, welcome to this 9th Annual Teaching Learning Conference, which had its genesis before the Teaching and Learning Office was formally launched in 2008. Actually, it was a Teaching and Learning Portfolio that was launched in 2008. And since then, the conference has grown in anticipated, but mostly unanticipated ways, to become one of the most visible and influential entities in the country, aggressively promoting the scholarship of teaching and learning, influencing national policy, and contributing to global debates. And we are honored to have esteemed academics from across the globe who have graciously accepted our invitation to share their scholarly wisdom and stimulate possibilities for research in our endeavor to make higher education more responsive to competing local and global demands. We are especially privileged to have a dear colleague from the University of Witwatersrand, WITS, Professor Adam Habib. Is he here yet? Oh, he'll be joining us shortly. Prof. Habib, as you know, is an internationally acclaimed scholar and political commentator. We also welcome Professor William Tierney from the University of Southern California, who will join us later today. Prof. Tierney, as you know, is a distinguished international policy scholar and the past president of AERA. Welcome also to Professor Herbert Chimundu. Is he here yet? Welcome, sir. Lovely to have you. Prof. Chimundu is one of the continent's foremost linguists, a former Fulbright scholar. He holds fellowships in several universities internationally. Our third keynote speaker, Professor Fazl Rizvi, is regrettably not with us. I learned last week that he was ordered by his doctor to cancel his trip because of ill health. He sends us profuse apologies, and on your behalf, I extend our best wishes to him for a speedy recovery. On learning that Fazl would not be able to join us, I hastily called Professor Naren Bejnath, the Pro-Vice Chancellor of UNISA and the newly appointed CEO of the Council on Higher Education. And he graciously accepted the invitation to fill in for Fazl. He will join us tomorrow. A special welcome to Stephen Harrison. Say hi, Stephen. Stephen is an American author and a motivational speaker who has given talks and workshops all over Europe and USA for the past 20 years, and he will be delivering a workshop at the conference tomorrow, I think. This afternoon, yeah. Let me also then, on your behalf, welcome our guests from various parts of the country, our sister universities, and beyond, including Egypt, England, Ethiopia, Finland, Germany, Japan, Kenya, Lesotho, Liberia, Malawi, Nigeria, Qatar, Korea, Swaziland, Uganda, USA, Zimbabwe, and you will forgive me if I've left out any. Welcome to you all. Our Vice Chancellor was supposed to be with us to address you. Regrettably, he has been called away to attend to some rather burning issues consuming our students, if you'll excuse the intended pun. But that gives us more time with our guest speaker, Professor Habib, and it gives us more time to listen to our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Vital, whom I want to welcome to the podium now. Professor Vital has been the founding Deputy Vice Chancellor of the Teaching and Learning Portfolio, a former school teacher and teacher educator. She's also an accomplished mathematics educator. And more recently, she's turned her attention to the scholarship of teaching and learning, and in particular, its implications for curriculum reform in higher education. And after Renuka's address to you, she will chair the session with Professor Adam Habib. I will then return to the podium to make a few housekeeping announcements. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. A special welcome to this, the 9th Annual Teaching and Learning in Higher Education Conference. I do want to just acknowledge our special guests and keynote speakers, Professor Habib, Professor Tierney, Professor Chimhandu, Professor Bajnath, Professor Harrison. Thank you very much for agreeing to present and to share your ideas and thoughts with us at the conference this year. And I want to especially welcome all the colleagues, our colleagues from UKZN and universities across the world and in the country, as well as students and all guests and delegates that have this interest in this very important area of teaching and learning in higher education. So by way of a few introductory comments, I would like to use the opportunity to maybe begin to map a way forward for us in the conference. You will be hearing more from Rabi Danpath around how the conference is going to try and do something a little bit different this year in trying to develop some reflections and themes at the end of the conference, but I'll leave that to Rabi to share with you a bit later. So, colleagues, of course, higher education transformation is firmly in the media spotlight. We've had the Roads Must Fall and many other campaigns around language, funding, etc., around the country, and also at our own university at UKZN in the last few weeks. So the theme of reimagining higher education policy implementation for this 9th Annual Teaching and Learning Conference is especially relevant, especially insofar as it refers to university curricula, I think. Indications are that the South African Council on Higher Education proposals for undergraduate curriculum reforms, to which all of us responded and made a case for a flexible curriculum structure, are unlikely to be implemented by the National Department of Higher Education. The Minister has more or less indicated so. Instead, what is being proposed is a growth in undergraduate foundation program provisioning, which is envisaged for the different extended degree programs. So in some ways, universities will now need to have serious curriculum conversations that lead to real and substantial curriculum reforms. That has become especially urgent if we are to really seriously do anything about the dropout and high failure rates and what we already know are some of the problems in the curriculum that could impact better outcomes for students and for student learning. So certainly at UKZN, we kind of delayed that kind of deep critical curriculum conversations, mainly because we didn't want to start a discussion that could eventually lead to some kind of curriculum change fatigue. So UKZN, like many other institutions, have tinkered on the edges of the curriculum. The case that you might know about, the successful implementation of the requirement of isiZulu language proficiency in all undergraduate curricula, is one such instance. So for an institution like UKZN, emerging from, I would call them grueling university mergers and discussions about common curricula, it may well be that the time has arrived for taking a next serious step. While the higher education curricula is rich with analysis of higher education curricula and what should or ought to be done, arguably much less is known about what has been done, and especially in overhauling university curricula at an institutional or system level. So by way of inserting one thread of discussions into this conference, I would like to propose a set of questions that we could be engaged in, among many others, to move from what we so often have, talk shops and workshops, to try and get to some real change and real action. And I want to just put four sets of questions on the table that we may want to consider, and just based on being in the university and being part of the quality, the Council for Higher Education Quality Enhancement Project, seem to be suggesting themselves. So the first question, which I think we have been spending a great deal of time thinking about, which is the first year of university for students. And the question I want to pose is, how could we rethink and better facilitate the navigation of that bridge we know is riddled with potholes and obstacles that students have to traverse from schooling to university? We know the length and kind of the bridge that has to be crossed, and we know that it's not all the same for all students. We know how different the baggage is that students carry across that bridge. But there is much we could do in universities to support that crossing, knowing all the challenges that first-year students face, be they from rural communities or first-generation university students. So I want to move away from, I'm not saying that there aren't challenges in schooling and whatever is going on in schooling and that we should work to try and improve that all the time. But what I am saying is that those students, when students arrive at our doors at the university, what is it that we could do? What is in our hands, in our power that we could do better? So certainly, we could do much more in reviewing the first semester or the first year of the undergraduate curriculum. We know that the first semester and first year are sometimes packed with what has come to be called gatekeeping killer courses that result in a year or more being added to the undergraduate studies of students by failing even a single prerequisite module in the first semester. So we could do much more to facilitate that bridge. We know that there's very little guidance and counseling about careers in schools, and that the wrong choices made in selecting disciplinary or professional program majors because students have little knowledge and understanding of what those curricula and content entail. We know the struggles of students to become inducted in what is often what they experience as an alien institutional culture. It's alien for all students, given the huge differences from schooling to university. So if we know all of this, how could we redesign, at the very least, the first-year curriculum? The second set of questions I would like to put on the table is how do we ensure that every undergraduate has some experience in community engagement activity before they graduate? That is, how do we take seriously the community engagement component of our mission and visions in a university? How could we redesign our curricula so that every student, as a part of their assessment, that means taken seriously in the curriculum, is required to demonstrate that they have learned about serving others, about caring for others, besides themselves in the course of an undergraduate degree? Could every academic, I'm asking, find ways in which community engagement activities could be built into each and every program in academically creative and authentic ways? I know when I ask this, the next question I get is, where will we find the resources? But I do want to say is, could we first think about the problem before we think about anything else, so that we could have students demonstrate simple acts of caring and kindness before they complete their studies. I want to acknowledge that there are many projects in universities like these, and there are many very good examples which show how we could do this. The question I'm putting is, how do we ensure this at an institutional level, not only in the pockets of excellence? The pockets of excellence, I do believe, provide very useful examples that we could replicate across the university. The third set of questions revolve around complex curriculum questions, which are about how are we preparing students for a rapidly changing, uncertain, and competitive, globalizing, and technologically advancing world with its increasing threats for graduates to access further study and employment. How are our curricula to develop awareness and understanding of the context of Africa, and to respond to visions like advancing an African scholarship that is rooted and responsive to its context? So how do we transform our curricula to attend to very much competing challenges that have to recognize where we are in our own development as a country or even as a university, and the ever-changing global world in which our students have to find a future life and work, etc. And that is changing in so many different aspects, not least of which the advances in technology and how that is changing in quite fundamental ways, teaching, learning, relationships between students and teachers, etc. And then a fourth set of questions revolve around how is an undergraduate curriculum a preparation for becoming generators of knowledge and not only consumers. And this is a very important challenge, I think, if we are to overcome our colonial and apartheid legacy. So how can our collective mindsets be shifted from deficit models, even as we confront them to see potentiality, to see what is possible in each and every student. It has been found that a common feature of undergraduate curricula of top research universities is that research education and training in its various forms are introduced early in undergraduate curricula. So the question is, how can research in its different manifestations related to the broad disciplinary and professional fields be made available to undergraduates, be it as future active producers, critical users, or literate consumers of research? So, rethinking the undergraduate curriculum as preparation for research raises questions about the South African undergraduate curriculum, also at the other end of the curriculum, not only coming into it, but as you complete it. And here I speak specifically of the honors program, which is a qualification that is added at the end of a 3-year bachelor degree. And the question I want to ask there is, why do we continue to impose gatekeepers to provide access to this honors level of study? And in a desktop study that we looked across universities in the country, almost all universities have some or other requirement of 55% or 60% or 65%, which must be obtained in your major subject in order to gain access into an honors program. So the question is, would the removal of this, I think, rather arbitrary entry requirement reduce the inequity that currently exists between 4-year undergraduate programs that lead directly to masters and these 3-year undergraduate degrees which require a 1-year honors, and thereby bring the undergraduate curriculum into alignment with practices internationally, where a number of countries have moved to 4-year degree programs? So would reviewing this minimum entry requirement provide access to postgraduate studies in a way that could view the honors as an undergraduate degree, as a continuation of the undergraduate degree, and thereby significantly increasing cohorts in honors as a recruitment for masters and doctorate over the longer term, since the honors degree does serve as a pipeline to the postgraduate masters and doctoral degrees. So would unblocking and widening this point in the pipeline have the potential to significantly enhance and contribute to higher level knowledge and skills needs of the country? Because could it have the potential to enhance graduate attributes in enabling a move towards having larger numbers of undergraduates leaving the university with a postgraduate honors qualification and thereby greater levels of competence? So at UKZN this year, we did undertake a serious statistical study on what would happen if we removed, which we have in our programs, a 55% requirement into honors. And the statistical study was presented at Senate, and it actually showed that the implications of that wouldn't be very significant. If anything, and controversially, it showed that if we admitted more of UKZN students from undergraduate into the honors, it would improve the honors performance. I won't say too much of that because that's a whole different, another discussion. But my main point in raising it here, in talking a little bit about the curriculum, is we really have to ask questions, quite serious ones, about many of our taken for granted assumptions, which we have inherited historically, and for which it's quite interesting. If you now interrogate seriously, you will find quite challenging to find a basis for. So let me conclude by saying, we continue to live in an important historical moment in higher education especially. And I think that the students in the country have opened a critical window of opportunity through the current ferment that we are seeing, which offers universities the possibilities to significantly reimagine our curricula for substantially better learning outcomes, to serve society. And with that, I thank you.